6 votes, 3 Republican and 3 Democrat, redefined a town's past and brought to light injustices within the stories of those who had suffered and endured in the shadows of the past. This is the story of Goshen, Indiana's legacy of being a sundown town and its efforts to recognize and reconcile this history. Over the last century, Goshen, Indiana, like many small American towns, has faced racial and social challenges that have created a complicated past. Goshen, like several other small settlements across the United States, was a sundown town that used racially exclusionary tactics to keep minorities out of the community. Like other communities, substantial evidence shows Goshen's covered, forgotten, and suppressed past that was unknown to many until famous author James Loewen included the Maple City in his book about sundown towns in America.
A sundown town is any jurisdiction, a town, a city, even a county in the United States that systematically excluded people of color, especially African Americans. Dr. James Loewen wrote a book called Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of American Racism. As Dr. Loewen defines it, a sundown town is any jurisdiction that systematically excluded people of color, first and foremost from living in that jurisdiction. But what Dr. Loewen discovered was even being in a town or community overnight. That's the whole idea. You need to, if you're a person of color, you need to be out of town by dark and don't come back until dawn, if you come back, or if you even pass through this town.
A sundown town is an area I think the term is unique to the United States, that has historically, either by custom or tradition or by oppressive tactics, have kept certain groups of people from living in that area. I think it's mostly been associated with African Americans, and in many places in the country also Jewish people. But variations of sundown towns, that idea can occur with people groups across the country.
After the Civil War, many freed slaves from the South moved towards the North seeking a better life and more opportunity. In many cases, they would find the North as unwelcoming as the South and sundown towns. Places along their route, like Dawson County, North Chattanooga, and Newburgh, would create exclusions for people of color. Unfortunately, the Goshen community was overall unwelcoming and discriminatory towards minorities, especially African Americans. In addition to the unspoken sundown town rules, some official city offices put into writing these exclusionary means from the 1930s to the late 1970s, including statements about Goshen's safety and its homage to a more white population.
I experienced quite a few things. Personally, I had a friend that he worked here in Elkhart, and those were my drinking days. We'd go there and have a drink after work on Fridays, and I got a chance to experience not being welcome, being in the wrong place and at the wrong time. So I got the chance to experience that personally. Well, you can tell they didn't want you there, from just the way they they were acting and talking and name calling. It would call the N-word and things like that. That was when you're going right in off of 33. Used to be a tavern there years ago. And I was at that tavern with a friend of mine and didn't feel welcome at all.
Goshen created an unwelcoming environment and included some housing deeds that prevented people of color from living within the city limits. This ensured that people of color would have no desire to settle within Goshen, most of whom then chose to live on the outskirts, even if they worked within the city limits.
And in the early days, the demographics page was written by mayors in the community, and then later on it was taken over by chambers of commerce. But in the mid-1950s, if you go to the public library, there's a sentence in there that says, Goshen is low crime because of the nature of its population, which is 97.5% native-born white, 2.5% foreign-born white, and there are no Negroes. Now, you stop and think, that's a pretty racist statement. You know, we're low crime because we're all white.
This is what they were promoting about Goshen to attract white families to move here and white businesses, white-owned businesses to move here.
Well, I never looked in Goshen for an apartment, even when I was looking for this house here, because of the atmosphere that Goshen had up until recently, that, you know, blacks just didn't go over there and try to get apartments.
The answer that, well, people just like to live around people who are like them, sometimes becomes an argument that is hard to defy, because there is a truth to that, but segregation just perpetuates itself.
We worked in Goshen, we always did, but we just never chose to move and live there and make Goshen a residence for us. It just wasn't, you know, it wasn't something that we desired to do.
I got several phone calls, but the one I remember the most clearly is from the son of Rollin Roth, who said that his father was mayor, Republican mayor in the early 50s in Goshen, and at the time that his father was mayor, a black family moved into Goshen, which was a big deal. It was almost unheard of, even in the early 50s. He said, my father got a lot of pushback. He got a lot of protests from especially the neighbors of this new family. He said, my dad said to these people who were complaining, it's a free country. You know, you can live wherever you want in the United States. I said, so what happened to this family? The neighbors saw to that. They harassed them so unmercifully that within a few weeks or months, they moved out on their own.
I think my real contact with Goshen began when I moved here to live. A black guy had robbed somebody and headed up toward Michigan. And I was told that he looked exactly like me. Of course, that blacks always look like one another like that, you know. One of the police officers, I lived next to them, his parents, on College Avenue once upon a time. And he was at this roadblock, and I thought he had waved me on. He wanted to, and so I stopped, and I thought he recognized who I was. It was at night, and I began to drive off. And there's a person in back of me who knew who I was, who recognized my car at least. And I didn't know what happened there, but she told that police officer that who I was. And so he didn't shoot me. I was told that by someone later on. Yeah, he could have gotten me. And that's always the case.
The climax of racial discrimination in Goshen arrived with a Ku Klux Klan rally in the 1970s that received support from the local youth.
The Ku Klux Klan, people that wore the white robes and the white hoods and hung people and, you know, hated African Americans.
A couple of times I went to Goshen in 1974, I went over there and out in front of the courthouse, you had people with hoods on. You had the KKK walking around with signs, and the signs were very offensive. They had signs of, with a little baby, half black, half white, and they were saying all the appropriate words to go with that sign, that you didn't want your children to look like that.
Well, actually, I took my son downtown to one of the Klan rallies across the street because I wanted them to witness this, to know, as a black individual in America, this is what you're up against. That this ugliness is just beneath the surface, and at times it will rear its ugly head. And we need to be prepared for that. And we need to be willing to stand up like our forefathers. And like I said, my father did not march in vain. Civil rights happened, and we're not going back.
The KKK was met with a shocking surprise. Many in town organized a counter-protest outnumbering the KKK's contingent. This is considered a turning point for Goshen, with many wanting to move forward to establish a more welcoming community that celebrated diversity.
You know, the Ku Klux Klan came into town just soon before Mayor Puro left office, and it was out of that, I mean, he created this Diversity Day, an alternative event for people to go to instead of going down and gawk at the Ku Klux Klan downtown, which is what they want. So it was out of that Diversity Day was born, and then the Human Relations Commission. And it's not the last time the Ku Klux Klan came back. You know, they came back a couple times when I was mayor, and so one time the city council decided to pass an anti-mask ordinance that says, yeah, First Amendment protects your right to speak, but it doesn't protect anonymous speech.
And I contacted the Southern Poverty Law Center in Montgomery, Alabama, communicating with them about what was happening in my community and asking for advice. What do I do? So it was then that I found out about the anti-mask ordinance. They sent me a sample anti-mask ordinance and suggested that as a way to move forward to sort of unmask the Klan.
They gave us some advice on how to write an ordinance that would pass constitutional muster. So we passed it, and the night we passed it, the Ku Klux Klan sat in the back of the room in their robes and hoods and tried to intimidate people. And the leader of the Klan asked if he could speak at the microphone, and I said, well, yeah, but the rules of the council are you have to identify yourself, so you'll have to take your hood off and give us your name. And he agreed to do that if the cameras didn't train on him, and he came up and he took his hood off and gave a name, and our police chief was sitting in the back of the room going like this. And I said, evidently that's not your real name, what is it? So he gave a different name, and so we passed that ordinance, and we got sued by the ACLU in Indiana, and we lost that lawsuit. We spent $50,000. Back then, $50,000 was real money. But nobody really complained about us wasting money because the community made a statement that, you know, we don't want this in our community.
Change came about slowly for the community of Goshen, and it would take time before its past was formally acknowledged. And while the community started to become more welcoming towards minorities, it would take decades before people of color would feel comfortable living in Goshen.
The post office brought the postmaster in. He was African-American from South Bend. And he's a real gregarious guy. He couldn't buy a house in the city limits. You know, between the banks and the realtors, he ended up having to buy a house right outside the city limits. But he was real gregarious. He took it upon himself to integrate everything he could, okay? So he joined our Kiwanis Club, and he joined the Exchange Club, and those two clubs are supposed to be mutually exclusive, so you don't belong to two, but which clubs are gonna tell the first African-American they can't belong to your club? Nobody did, okay? He joined the Country Club and the Presbyterian Church, and everybody was talking about, hey, we've got an African-American now. Well, it's the same guy, okay?
In 2014, Goshen started the process to formally recognize its racially exclusionary past.
Dan Shank and Leroy Berry brought the idea to me that would the city pass a resolution like this? And I said right away, yeah, we'll take a look at this. And I said, but we need to build support from the ground up. We can't just take this to the city council without a groundswell of support.
And so we had an initial meeting there with the CRC in mid-November. Goshen News then gave it like front page coverage the following weekend. The whole community became aware of this resolution that was being proposed, and it was still being formulated.
This process wasn't easy and was met with some backlash and resistance regarding wording and its overall purpose.
So it was kind of a quiet process at the beginning to build up this support so that the people on the city council that were not so open to it wouldn't have as much support to be against it, I guess.
You know, there was definitely conflict when this first came to the council. Even within the council itself, there was a group, and I was on this side, saw the resolution that was presented, and I was absolutely 100% behind passing it. Others weren't necessarily against the passage, but they wanted to change some of the language.
And there were people that didn't want to apologize because it wasn't us that did it, it was somebody else that did it.
They went through some pretty heavy community and committee discussions. Ended up bringing that resolution back, and it had changed that wording, so it no longer said "I'm sorry," but it did mention that it was something that we never want to see happen in Goshen again.
I have never been in a community meeting where I felt so uncomfortable. It was clear it was not a safe space, and one of the first things I did was look for where the exits were, because the tension was palpable.
Truth-telling precedes reconciliation. We need to tell the truth about the past before we can have genuine reconciliation.
A resolution is a statement of opinion of the city council. Here is how we feel. And that's what this resolution was. We want to acknowledge that we were this, and it should never happen again. It's a statement of opinion.
I remember Leroy said that night, he said, Goshen could be exemplary in adopting this kind of resolution that acknowledges what happened for most of the 20th century in this community.
Yeah, I think overall it was a good process, but I do feel that that piece of removing the "I'm sorry," I felt that weakened it a little bit, but I still think we were able to make a strong statement for the community about who we want to be.
On March 17, 2015, the Goshen City Council finally passed the Sundown Town resolution with unanimous votes, becoming one of the first former Sundown communities to pass a resolution of this kind.
Yes. Councilman Stutzman?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Councilman Weddle?
Yes.
Where you have people coming from different experiences and different backgrounds. They have been cultivated in different ways. You see things differently. But I prefer to just think of it straightforwardly as here is a community that thinks enough of itself to come to terms with an indecent part of its past and is ready to acknowledge it because that's what human beings do. There's always going to be the politicking of it, who gets favored and who gets blamed and so on. It's not a blame game.
Well, I think maybe as important as not repeating it is just that these next generations don't grow up ignorant like we were ignorant. It happened, it was wrong, it's a new day. And so that's as close to an apology as you can get, to say it was wrong, without using the word apology. And so it's a resolution. So resolutions can get buried on a shelf, and lost, and 10 years from now, nobody remembers it or whatever. And we don't want that to happen at this point. We want to remind future generations of our past so that our kids and their kids don't grow up as ignorant as we grew up.
Keeping the conversation going, that's what "it's a new day" means to me. We're going to keep this going. We're always going to do better. And if we're making mistakes, we're going to acknowledge it, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to make it better again.
Well, I think it was probably 2011. I was coming through Goshen, and I was speeding. And like I said, I'm retired, but I was a truck driver, and I was speeding a little bit. I was over the speed limit, and police car pulled in, put his lights on me, and I pulled over, and actually it was a pleasant stop. You know, I was geared up. I don't know what's going to happen now. This is going through my mind. But actually, the officer was talked to me real decent. Asked me why I was in such a big hurry, and he just told me to slow down and have a nice morning. It was in the morning, and so I've seen that shift then. But it probably started happening before then.
Well, I think it's important for everyone to feel that they're a part of the community and to be welcome at the table and not just on the sidelines. So once again, representation matters. I was the first African American or BIPOC individual elected to any office in Goshen. You know, since then we've had an Hispanic member to the council. Hopefully we'll have more. And I think it's important for individuals to feel that they do have a seat at the table, that even though white people have historically been in charge of a lot of positions, that doesn't mean that the door is slammed shut anymore. It's not open wide, and you got to push your way through. But hopefully there's enough individuals who feel that this is my community as well.
I think one of the most beautiful things that happened in the city of Goshen was that those who are in charge of public policy making for the city had the insight and the ability and the commitment, the integrity, if you will, to do what was right and good, and could emancipate themselves from the impediments that prevent that kind of thing from occurring, and do what they thought was the right thing to do. If Goshenites link ourselves with that kind of commitment and force, shouldn't we have a good experience? Shouldn't we be able to prevail over our lesser selves? I think so. And so the hope for Goshen is like the hope for any other place in these United States. To remember not who we are, but who we're supposed to be.